Hello, my name is Ryan Kinchin. I'm with High Desert Math Tutor, and today I want to talk to you about some more challenging factoring by grouping problems. So what makes these problems slightly more challenging is that we have coefficients that are actually negative numbers or a mixture of negative and positive numbers. So I'm going to take this video a little bit faster than the previous one, seeing that I've already given an introduction into factoring by grouping. So as before, we want to focus on first the leading coefficient and the constant term of this polynomial. We want to first multiply those two numbers together and put the product at the top of the x. So 2 times negative 21 is negative 42. Next, we want to look at the coefficient for the middle term, which is negative 1, and ask what two numbers multiply up to negative 42, but add up to negative 1. And you may say, I think, 6 times negative 7 will multiply up to negative 42, and add up to negative 1. Next, we are going to copy this polynomial, but we're going to split this middle term into two separate terms. One term will have 6x's. The next one will be subtracting 7x's. So what we have here is 2x squared plus 6x minus 7x minus 21. And as you'll see, 6x minus 7x, when you combine those like terms, we get negative x, negative 1x. Okay, so now we're ready to factor by grouping, but this is an interesting problem because the first group of terms, nothing special about those. But this second group of terms right here, notice there's a negative here and a negative there. When we put parentheses around these terms, this negative needs to be able to distribute into the parentheses and make both of these numbers negative. But since this one's positive, when you multiply the negative in, that becomes negative. Well, since this one's negative, if we multiply this negative in, negative times negative is actually positive. So that would be problematic for us. So to account for a negative being in front of parentheses and needing to distribute into the parentheses, we're going to make this 21 positive. So that, again, we distribute the negative to the 7x, it becomes negative 7x. We distribute the negative to positive 21, and that becomes negative 21. Okay, so put our parentheses, our equal sign, and then in these parentheses for the first group, let's ask what number can we factor out of both terms? We can factor out a 2. What variables can we factor out of both terms? We can factor out an x. So what remains, when we take out the factor of 2 and the factor of x, we have a single factor of x plus, take away the 2 and the x, we have a 3. Here we bring down the negative sign, and we ask what can we factor out of this group. Both 7 and 21 have a common factor of 7. We're going to bring down our plus, and then we get a single x, and then 7 times 3 is 21. We add our brackets, and we identify the common factor between these two large terms, which the common factor is x plus 3. So we get x plus 3, and what remains in this term is 2x. We bring down the minus, and what remains in this term is the 7. And we have factored by grouping 2x squared minus x minus 21. into the two factors, x plus 3 and 2x minus 7. So this situation had a negative number in the middle term as a coefficient and a negative constant term. In this example, we are going to have a negative number for the middle coefficient, but a positive constant term. So let's see how this differs. Again, as always, we will focus on the leading coefficient and the constant term. We're going to multiply those together, which I actually have to do a little scratch work. So 18 times 14, 32, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 5, 2. So when we multiply 14 times 8, we get 252. And next, we take the middle coefficient and we copy that down here, negative 33. And we think, what numbers add up to negative 33? So before we even begin to think about what numbers multiply up to negative 252 and add up to negative 33, there's something important to notice here. So I'll go into this in greater depth in our factoring by trial and error video. But when the constant term is positive, that tells us something important about the numbers we need to multiply to get this polynomial. It tells us that the two numbers here that we're looking for have the same sign. When this is positive, these numbers have the same sign. They're either both positive or they are both negative. In this case, when you add those numbers together, since we get negative 33, that tells us that both of these numbers are negative. So we don't forget, I'm going to go ahead and add the negative signs. Well, now we need to identify what two numbers multiply up to 252 and add up to 33. I'm going to forget the negatives for now because we know both numbers are negative. So let's see. I'm going to start factoring 252. So 252 is the same as 2 times 126. Okay. Well, I could factor out another 2 from this. So we'll get 4 times, what's that, 63? All right, I'm going to factor a 3 out of this. We'll get 12 times 21. And let's take a look. So all of these factors multiply up to 252. But right here, 12 plus 21 is 33. So it looks like what we have here is negative 12 and negative 21 will multiply up to 252, positive 252, because negative times negative is positive, but they will add up to negative 33. So now it's time to rewrite this polynomial. So first, we can copy over the 14x squared. Next, we'll take the negative 12x. We're going to split this into two separate terms. We'll do minus 12x minus 21x. Then we copy over plus 18. Okay. Now it's time to do some grouping. So the first two terms we're going to group together. The second two terms right here, we're going to group this together also. But notice, just as in this example, when we grouped these terms, there was a complication because there was a negative right here, and we need to account for distributing the negative into parentheses. Notice we have a negative right here also. So we want to have a negative 21x, but we want, as our final result after distributing this negative into parentheses, we want this negative to make the 18 positive. So what do we need to change the sign of 18 to in order to make that positive after distributing a negative in? Well, negative times negative becomes a positive 18. So now that we've done that careful sign analysis, we can move on to actually factoring these groups. So here, 14 and 12 both have a 2. X squared and x, both of these terms have a single factor of x. So when we factor this out, what we have remaining here is 7x. We'll bring down the minus, and this turns into 6. We bring down this minus sign. 21 and 18 both have a 3. This term has x, this term has no variable, so we're only getting a 3 here. Now, 3 times 7x is 21x. We'll bring down the minus, and 3 times 6 is 18. We add our brackets. Then we identify what factors do each of these large terms have in common, which they each have a 7x minus 6. So when we take away the 7x minus 6 from each of these terms, this one only has a 2x remaining. We'll bring down the minus sign. This term only has a 3 remaining. So we've done it. We've factored 14x squared minus 33x plus 18 into the two factors, 7x plus, minus 6 and 2x minus 3. So notice, this wasn't an extremely trivial problem in the sense that these were some big numbers. You know, multiplying the 14 and the 18, I didn't want to do that in my head. So right away I jumped into long multiplication. But then to actually identify factors that multiply up to 252, but add up to negative 33, I needed to take a moment to actually work through that. So it's extremely common in factoring problems to need to do a little scratch work on the side. So don't let large numbers throw you off course. Just realize you just have to take a little extra time. Well, I hope that was a clear introduction into factoring by grouping with negative coefficients throughout the numbers. Keep an eye out for any future factoring videos. And again, this skill is essential to algebra, trigonometry, calculus, and many other fields throughout math. So factoring is one thing that you want to master as soon as possible.